some of the heaviest weights you'll ever carry are the ones no one can see. It's not the boxes you move, it's not the load you lift, it's the burden inside that wears you down. Emotional exhaustion is like that. It doesn't always look dramatic. You can be dressed up, smiling, showing up to work, posting on social media, shaking hands, saying I'm fine, and yet inside you're drained, you're running on fumes. And the hardest part is that nobody else can see it, so you start to wonder if it even counts. You start to wonder if maybe you're just weak, maybe you're just broken, maybe everybody else is managing fine while you're the one falling apart. But I want you to know tonight, it counts. That hidden weight you've been carrying is real. Just because it's invisible to others doesn't make it any less heavy for you. And sometimes what exhausts you the most isn't what you're doing with your hands, it's what you're holding in your heart. It's the stress that never leaves, the worry that wakes you up at night, the disappointment you can't seem to shake, the constant pressure to be strong for everybody else while you're wondering who's going to be strong for you. That's the kind of weight that wears you out, slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're not running anymore. You're crawling. It's tricky because emotional exhaustion doesn't announce itself. It sneaks up on you. You don't wake up one day and say, I think I'll be burned out today. It happens when the little things pile up one after another until you don't even realize how much you're carrying. That's why you snap at people you love. Why little problems feel like giant mountains. Why things that used to bring you joy now feel like chores. It's not because you don't care anymore, it's because you've been carrying too much for too long. And let me say this clearly, carrying hidden weight doesn't mean you don't have faith. It doesn't mean you're not strong. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you're human. Even Jesus got weary. Even the strongest people you admire have days where they feel spent. The problem isn't that you get tired. The problem is when you keep pretending you're not, because what you don't acknowledge, you can't release. And what you refuse to release will eventually break you down. I think of it like carrying a backpack filled with rocks. At first, you can handle it. You strap it on and say, I'm fine, I got this. But every day, more rocks get added. Another responsibility, another expectation, another disappointment, another fear. At first, you don't notice the difference, but after a while, you start to realize your steps are slower, your back is aching, your energy is gone. Not because one rock was too heavy, but because too many little ones piled up over time. That's what emotional exhaustion feels like. It's death by accumulation. And here's the danger. When the weight is hidden, people around you don't know you're carrying it. They keep asking for more because you've been so good at making it look easy. They don't realize you're smiling through pain, laughing through fatigue, showing up while breaking down. And because you've been carrying it so long, you've convinced yourself this is just how life is now. But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to pretend forever. You don't have to carry it all alone. The truth is, God never asked you to. He never asked you to shoulder every burden, to carry every fear, to bear every expectation without rest. In fact, he said the opposite. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest isn't a reward for when you've earned it. Rest is a necessity when you're carrying hidden weight. And the first step toward receiving it is admitting that the weight is there. Some of you tonight need to give yourself permission to stop minimizing what you're going through. Stop saying, it's not that bad. Stop saying, other people have it worse. Stop saying, I should be able to handle this. No, your pain is valid. Your exhaustion is valid. What you've been carrying is heavy, and pretending it's not only keeps you trapped under it. The sooner you admit the weight, the sooner you can lay it down. And here's what's beautiful. When you finally lay down what's been hidden, you don't just get relief. You get renewal. You realize you were never created to carry everything on your own. You realize strength doesn't come from faking it. It comes from facing it and then placing it in the hands of the one who can handle what you can't. So maybe the weight you're carrying tonight is invisible to everyone else, but it doesn't have to stay invisible to you. Acknowledge it, name it, bring it into the light, because you can't heal what you hide, and you can't release what you deny. And the moment you admit that you're tired is the moment God can begin to restore your strength. There comes a point in life when you run out of strength, and if you've ever been there, you know exactly what I mean. It's not just being tired. It's not the kind of exhaustion that a nap can fix or a vacation can solve. It's deeper than that. It's when you've been pushing so hard, giving so much, carrying so long, that one day you wake up and realize you don't have anything left to give. And what makes it even harder is that you don't want to admit it. Because somewhere along the way, you were told that being strong means never running out, never showing weakness, never letting anyone see you struggle. But let me tell you the truth. Even the strongest people get spent. Even the people who look like they've got it all together, who carry themselves with confidence, who show up for everybody else, sooner or later they hit a wall, and running out of strength doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. You're not broken because you're tired. You're not a failure because you're empty. You've been carrying more than people know, and eventually even the strongest shoulders get weary. Think about your phone. It doesn't matter how advanced it is, how powerful the processor, how new the model. If you don't recharge it, it's going to die. And the more you use it, the quicker the battery drains. You don't call the phone weak when it runs out of power. You just know it needs to be recharged. Why do we understand that about technology, but refuse to accept it about ourselves? Why do we keep expecting ourselves to run on empty and never stop to recharge? And here's what happens when your strength is spent. Everything starts to feel heavier than it is. The smallest task feels like climbing a mountain. A simple decision feels impossible. Conversations feel draining. Things you used to enjoy feel like obligations. That's the sign you've been running too long without a refill. You've been trying to pour out from an empty cup. Sometimes it shows up in subtle ways. You lose your patience more quickly. You're easily irritated. You find yourself withdrawing from people, not because you don't love them, but because you just don't have the energy to engage. You procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because you're exhausted. That's what emotional exhaustion does. It takes away the margin that gives you the capacity to function. And the danger is, if you don't pay attention, you'll start believing that this version of you is permanent. You'll think this is just who I am now. But it's not who you are. It's what happens when your strength is spent. Even in Scripture we see this. Elijah, one of the greatest prophets, had moments where he was so tired he literally said, "I've had enough. I just want to lie down and die." This is a man who had just called down fire from heaven, who had seen God's power in miraculous ways, and yet, when his strength was gone, he collapsed under the weight of it all. And do you know what God did? He didn't lecture him, he didn't shame him, he let him rest. He sent an angel with food and water. He gave him space to recover, because God knows that even the strongest servants run out of strength. So if you're in that place right now, if you're feeling like you can't go another day, if you're putting on a smile, but inside you're running on empty, I want you to know this. It doesn't mean you've lost your faith. It doesn't mean you've lost your purpose. It means you need to be refilled. It means you need to stop pretending that being strong means never stopping. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're tired. The truth is, you can't live on yesterday's strength. What carried you last season won't carry you this season. That's why the Bible says His mercies are new every morning. Because every day you need fresh strength. Every day you need fresh grace. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to carry it all on your own. There's a source that doesn't run dry, and you were never meant to operate without it. So maybe today, instead of trying to push through one more time on your own, you need to stop and admit, I can't do this by myself. Maybe you need to let go of the pressure to always be the strong one and realize that real strength isn't about never running out. It's about knowing where to run when you do. And when you realize that, you'll see that being spent isn't the end of your story. It's just the signal that it's time to be restored. There's a lie that many of us have believed, and it sounds like this: if you stop, everything will fall apart. If you rest, you're being lazy. If you pause, you'll fall behind. And so we run, we push, we grind, we keep saying yes when our soul is crying out for us to slow down. We convince ourselves that stopping is weakness, but what if it's not weakness at all? What if stopping is strength? What if the pause is the very thing that makes the progress possible? See, we live in a culture that glorifies busy. The more plates you're spinning, the more important you must be. The more tired you are, the more successful you must be. But let me tell you, busyness is not the same as effectiveness. Just because you're moving doesn't mean you're moving in the right direction. Just because you're doing a lot doesn't mean you're doing what matters. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop, breathe, and pause long enough to realign with your purpose. Think about this. Even music is built on pauses. If a song had no rests, no silence, just non-stop noise, it wouldn't be beautiful. It would be unbearable. The pauses give the notes their meaning. The silence is what creates the rhythm. Your life is the same way. Without pauses, it becomes noise. Without pauses, you lose the melody of your soul. That's why rest is not optional. It's essential. But the problem is, many of us don't know how to pause. We know how to scroll. We know how to binge. We know how to distract ourselves. But distraction is not the same thing as rest. You can watch an entire season of a show and still feel empty. You can go on vacation and come back more drained than when you left. Why? Because rest isn't about escaping life. It's about reconnecting with the source of life. A pause isn't just the absence of activity. It's the presence of renewal. Even God modeled this for us. After creating the world, He rested, not because He was tired, but to show us the rhythm He designed for us. Work, then rest. Pour out, then pause. It's the cycle of creation. But so often we reverse it. We work and work and work, thinking we'll rest when we're finished. But we're never finished. There's always another email, another task, another demand. That's why rest can't be something you earn. It has to be something you choose. And here's the thing about the pause. It doesn't make you fall behind. It positions you to go further. Have you ever noticed how athletes train? They don't just push their bodies non-stop until they collapse. They understand recovery is part of growth. Muscles don't get stronger in the lifting. They get stronger in the resting. If you never pause, you never give yourself the chance to rebuild. And then you wonder why you're burnt out, why you're short, tempered, why you can't focus. It's because you've been running without recovery. The pause is powerful because it gives you perspective. When you're in constant motion, you can't see clearly. It's like driving through a storm. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is pull over and wait for visibility to return. But instead, we just keep driving faster, hoping we'll outrun the storm. That's how many of us live. But a pause lets you see what you couldn't see when you were rushing. It helps you remember why you started in the first place. Some of you need to hear this. Pausing does not mean you're giving up. Pausing does not mean you've lost momentum. Pausing means you're wise enough to know that you can't keep pouring from an empty cup. You can't keep running on fumes. You can't keep pretending you're limitless. The pause gives you permission to be human, and in that space, God meets you with His strength. Think about Jesus. In the middle of healing crowds, in the middle of teaching, in the middle of miracles, He would slip away to quiet places and pray. He knew the power of the pause. If the Son of God needed time to withdraw, to reconnect, to breathe, why do we think we can keep running without it? Pausing isn't neglecting your purpose, it's protecting it. It's saying, I refuse to lose myself while trying to hold everything else together. Maybe that's the word for you tonight. Maybe the most spiritual thing you can do right now isn't to take on another responsibility, but to pause. To put the weight down, to turn off the noise, to sit still long enough for your soul to catch up with your body. You don't have to earn that pause. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it. You just need to embrace it, because sometimes the very breakthrough you've been waiting for doesn't come by pushing harder, but by pausing longer. Sometimes the strength you've been missing isn't found in doing more, but in resting more. And when you pause, you give God space to move in ways your striving never could. When you're empty, the natural instinct is to look for something to fill you. That's human nature. But the question is never if you'll refill, it's always where. Because the truth is, not all refills are the same. You can put the wrong thing in your tank and still end up stranded on the side of the road. And some of us have been wondering why we're still exhausted, even after trying to recharge, and it's because we've been running to sources that don't have the power to restore us. It's easy to look for quick fixes. You feel empty, so you grab your phone and scroll for hours. You feel drained, so you buy something you don't need, hoping it'll give you a spark. You feel tired, so you drown yourself in work to distract yourself from the weight inside. And maybe it works for a moment, it numbs, it soothes, it gives you a burst of energy. But it doesn't last, because those things were never designed to sustain your soul. They're temporary, they leak, they leave you thirstier than before. Think of it like drinking salt water. If you're stranded at sea and desperate for something to quench your thirst, you'll be tempted to drink what surrounds you. It looks like it will satisfy, but the more you drink it, the drier you become. And that's what happens when we run to the wrong sources. They look like they'll fill us, but in the end, they only make us emptier. There's a story in Scripture about a woman at a well who came every day to draw water, but inside, she was still thirsty. Jesus met her there and said, "If you drink this water, you'll be thirsty again. But if you drink the water I give you, you'll never thirst." He wasn't just talking about physical water, he was talking about soul-level sustenance. He was saying, the source you've been running to isn't enough. You need something deeper, something living, something eternal. And that's what many of us need to realize. We've been sipping from wells that were never meant to sustain us. Approval from people, success at work, accomplishments, recognition, entertainment, these things aren't wrong, but they're not strong enough to carry the weight of your soul. They don't have the power to refuel you at the level where you're really empty. That's why you can hit a goal and still feel dissatisfied. That's why you can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. That's why you can check everything off your list and still feel restless at night. Because the source you've been running to wasn't the right one. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes the reason you're still exhausted is because you keep trying to fill yourself with things that were never designed to give you life. You've been running to distractions instead of restoration. You've been running to temporary fixes instead of eternal strength. And as long as you keep drinking from the wrong well, you'll keep feeling thirsty. But here's the good news. You don't have to keep drinking from the wrong source. There is a well that never runs dry. There is a strength that doesn't fade. There is a peace that isn't shaken by circumstances. When you refuel from the right source, you find something deeper than temporary relief. You find lasting renewal. It doesn't mean your problems disappear. It doesn't mean your schedule magically clears. But it does mean that in the middle of the chaos, you have a well you can draw from that never runs out. And that changes everything. Because when you're connected to the right source, you can keep pouring out without burning out. You can face demands without being destroyed by them. You can carry responsibility without it crushing you. Not because you're stronger than everyone else, but because you've learned where to find your strength. Maybe the most important question you can ask yourself right now is this. When I'm tired, where do I run? When I'm empty, what do I reach for first? Because where you run when you're empty will determine how you're refilled. And if you've been running to the wrong things, it's never too late to turn around. You don't have to keep draining yourself on sources that don't satisfy. You can decide today to connect to the one source that can actually sustain you. Because here's the promise, when you run to him, you don't just get enough for today, you get overflow. You get more than you need so you can pour into others without losing yourself. You get strength in your weakness, peace in your storm, joy in your sorrow. And that kind of refueling doesn't fade when the moment passes. It anchors you, it restores you, it sustains you. So maybe the reason you've been so exhausted isn't that you've been working too hard, it's that you've been drawing from the wrong well. But if you'll pause long enough to connect to the source that never runs dry, you'll find that what you thought was empty was just waiting to be one of the greatest lies we believe when we're emotionally exhausted is that we have to carry it all by ourselves. That if we let anyone else in, we'll look weak. That if we ask for help, we'll be a burden, and so we keep smiling in public while we're breaking in private. We keep saying, "I'm fine," while we're falling apart. We convince ourselves that no one would understand, so we shoulder it silently. But the truth is, you were never created to carry everything alone. Isolation magnifies exhaustion. When you keep everything bottled up inside, it doesn't get lighter, it gets heavier. Because now you're not only carrying the burden, you're carrying the shame of hiding it, and shame will wear you down faster than any problem ever could. But something powerful happens when you step out of isolation and into connection. The weight doesn't magically disappear, but it does get lighter because you realize you don't have to carry it all by yourself. Think about it like this. If I asked you to hold a heavy box for 5 minutes, you could probably do it. But if I asked you to hold that same box for 5 hours, you'd start to shake. You'd start to sweat. Your arms would ache. And if you held it long enough, you'd eventually collapse under the weight. But what if after an hour, someone walked over and put their hands under the box with you? The weight wouldn't change, but your ability to carry it would. That's what happens when you let someone else in. The problem may still be there, but the pressure isn't crushing you anymore. We all need people who can hold the weight with us. People who can remind us of the truth when we forget. People who can pray for us when we don't have the words. People who can sit with us in silence when we're too tired to talk. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Even Jesus surrounded himself with people. He had his disciples. He had friends he leaned on. And if the Son of God chose not to carry his mission alone, what makes us think we can? But here's where many of us struggle. We don't want to admit we need help. We've been the strong one for so long that we don't know how to let anyone else in. We're afraid that if people really knew how tired we are, how broken we feel, how heavy it's been, they'd walk away. But the truth is, the right people won't walk away. They'll walk with you. The right people won't judge you for your exhaustion. They'll join you in it, and let me tell you, you are not as alone as you think you are. You may feel like no one sees you, but there are people who care. There are people who want to help. And more than that, there is a God who has promised that he will never leave you, never forsake you, never put more on you than he will give you the strength to endure. You don't have to be afraid of letting him in on your weakness. He already knows, he already sees, and he's not disappointed in you for being tired. He's not frustrated with you for needing help. He delights in carrying what you can. So maybe tonight, the most important thing you can do isn't to push harder or fake stronger, it's to open your hands and let someone else help you hold what you've been carrying. Maybe you need to pick up the phone and call a friend. Maybe you need to open up to your family. Maybe you need to be honest with God in prayer, not with the polished version of what you think he wants to hear, but with the raw version of how you really feel. I'm tired. I can't do this by myself. I need help. That prayer is not a sign of failure. It's a doorway to freedom. You don't have to prove your strength by carrying everything alone. Real strength is knowing when to ask for help. Real courage is admitting when it's too much. Real wisdom is realizing that what feels like the end for you is just the beginning of what God can do through community, through connection, through his presence. You are not meant to carry it alone, and the moment you release that lie, you'll find a strength you didn't know you had. Not because the weight disappeared, but because you finally let someone else carry it with you. So if you've been carrying hidden weight, remember, you don't have to hide it anymore. If your strength feels spent, know that it doesn't mean you failed, it just means you need to be refilled. If life has been pushing you non-stop, give yourself permission to pause, because even rest is part of God's plan for you. And when you pause, make sure you're refueling from the right source, not from what leaves you empty, but from what sustains you. Most of all, don't believe the lie that you have to carry it alone. You are not abandoned, you are not forgotten, and you are not fighting this battle by yourself.